Welcome to the Geek Homeworld. I am your host, SavageTechman. We talk sci-fi, TV, movies, superheroes, and all from a geek perspective. You can find us on Blogger, Google+, Twitter, Facebook. We're everywhere. Join the Geek Homeworld. Welcome to another episode of the Geek Homeworld podcast. SavageTechman here once again, and Cheryl is joining me. Hello.
Yay.
Welcome. And we are talking spoiler-free.
Spoiler-free.
Best that I can.
You will do it.
I will make sure.
Or I will use the force. I will force choke you.
Force choke. Oh, so many times. We are talking Star Wars Rogue One. Rogue One, a Star Wars story.
Rogue One, a Star Wars story.
Thank
or
you.
as one critic wrote, a Star Wars backstory.
Very good point.
Take 3 sentences from the first movie and go.
All new characters.
It's kind of like, I teach creative writing sometimes, and it's kind of like an assignment that you would give to your creative writing class. Open a book, point to a sentence, now write a story, and that's your first line.
Wow. Well,
I mean, does it hold up to... Well, it's hard for me to say, does it hold up to the 7 movies that have come before? Because not all of them hold up to each other.
Well, I'm stepping very lightly upon...
Because you're afraid you're going to spoil?
I'm afraid I'm going to spoil it.
We can always go, boop! If I go, boop, it means Ed just messed up.
This movie is worth seeing.
I thought you said it's worse than...
No, it's...
Worth seeing. Really?
Seeing.
Only worth seeing?
It has its moments. You have to realize one thing going in, that this is a Star Wars story. So it's going to be a little bit different from everything you've seen on the screen previously. But it's still familiar enough that it can be part of the official Star Wars canon. So the most important thing I think I want my listeners to know is that, yes, it is worth seeing. It is different, but it does fit into that mold of the Star Wars movies.
I think for the most part, I mean, it certainly throws in enough Star Wars trope and ideas and things that it is certainly the universe of Star Wars. I think they've been faithful to the fact that it's coming immediately before the first film, the 1977 Star Wars A New Hope.
Episode 4, yeah.
Episode 4.
It leads beautifully into that.
It really does do that. And it also, even though it's clearly a contemporary film, it's a 2016 film, it still feels like the universe of the young Luke Skywalker, the young Princess Leia. And so things look like that, but you still know, the technology's better. It's just instead of, as I've seen some of the reviews say, instead of having these spaceships built out of foam or plastic or whatever, they're digital. I mean, and if at the end credits, there are 312,000 digital artists getting credit on the film.
Yeah, it is literally blind you in 3D. You got all these names running across your eyeballs and your eyelids,
it's practically an animated film. No. In some respects, and I think also it's a good film. I would say above worth seeing. I would say it's a must-see film.
The acting and the story was better than some of the prequels.
Oh, for sure.
Well, definitely the dialogue.
It would be hard to convince me that any of the prequels were worth really. I would like to see a reboot of the prequels.
Oh, no.
I could be
a Jar Jar reboot.
Well, no, you would reboot without Jar Jar.
Yeah,
you would reboot without some of the stuff.
Yes,
and find a better reason for Darth to go to the dark side.
I respectfully disagree.
Well, we're supposed to be talking about Rogue One, so
it's all about.
I won't go rogue. I mean,
I can't believe I didn't remember say that. That would have been funny.
I thought the beginning of the film was really good, like not the very beginning, but the opening sequence, the opening scenes, part of the story was good. And then I felt it really went off track for the next like 30, 45 minutes.
It kind of wandered a little.
And then it got back and it was like, boom. Now
when
this
it got back,
it was like, this is the film I want to see.
This is Star Wars. And when it got cranked up, it got cranked up.
And it didn't stop from that point.
And it did not.
You know, but there's a part there, certainly a far too long part where it just gets lost, like literally gets lost. Mm-hmm. How many different locations do they go to?
They wanted you to know that there were battles taking place everywhere.
This is a big empire, y'all.
Yes, it's a big universe inside and outside the empire.
You know, you've already seen Tatooine. Who wants to live there?
Right.
You've already seen what's the world that.
There's Jeddah in here that.
Well, but not Jeddah. Well, Jeddah's another Tatooine, but the one that in
Mustafar.
No. If you let me finish my sentence, you'll know what I'm asking you. The one in the opening of The Force Awakens that Rey is on, whatever the name of that planet is. Jakku. They're all these desert planets, like all these places that nobody wants to live.
Well, they're hiding.
For the most part. The Empire is made up of places that people don't want to live.
Yeah.
Truly horrible places. In all kinds of different reasons. And they go to 3,000 of them in the first 12 seconds.
They do.
It's like boom, boom, boom. It's like, am I supposed to be in a geography class?
Yeah.
Stellar geography or something?
Well, it's, I tell you, there's one point in the film where they could have benefited for transporter technology.
Probably more than one point. Like they should have. There is one place, I'm telling you, that I have friends who are librarians, and they would love to work at the Imperial Archive. That's the only place worth being in this universe.
And I liken that to, if it doesn't appear in the Jedi archives at the Jedi Temple, this certainly doesn't exist.
But I think it does help. It sets up the first movie, A New Hope. It certainly uses the word hope.
Yeah, we call it the first movie because for a lot of us, that was the first Star Wars.
Now, for those of you born after that date,
Episode 1 was your first Star Wars movie. But it'll always kind of be Episode 4 was our first. So, the cinematography on this was gorgeous. You could see the money well spent on the screen.
Clearly a bigger budget than Lucas had on his first film.
Well, this is Disney, but... Well, yes, and in a different time, but the planets had their own visual mood. Mm-hmm. Each of them were different, of course, and there was a rainy planet that reminded me of the planet Camino, where the Clone Army was created.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, that was a rain to the extreme. They really needed a dry spell on that planet.
Yeah.
And,
they clearly need to maybe bring some planets together, combine them, and make a decent.
Some are in a sweet spot, and some are in the bad spot to be in the universe. No
really good Class M planets.
Yeah, I know. Where's Picard when you need him? To find all the good ones. But the effects were amazing. The special effects they serviced the movie. They did not detract from them. We saw it in the Big D 3D. Mm-hmm. You and I weren't sure.
I wish I could see Big D without the 3D. Because I really am not a fan of 3D.
I think I've seen Big D without 3D.
I never have. Because I enjoy the sound of Big D.
Oh, yeah. I enjoy the recliners in there. They're nice and comfortable,
the chairs are booming with the sound.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a better experience in Big D. But... the 3D in this, I'm not sure if it was just our screening that we had. I looked over at you, and for one moment you lifted up your 3D glasses, and then and you were looking at the screen. I was like, she's having problems with this 3D, and then I looked there, and at times I don't know if we were sitting too close to the screen or if it was just our actual theater screening, but we saw a little imperfection. We both noticed
in the middle of the screen.
In the middle of the screen, and it may have just been
it was just local to that theater, but it was very distracting to me.
Yeah, but it went away after a little bit.
But I still felt the 3D I couldn't focus more than usual.
Same here. I felt it was a little disorienting.
But part of that was the part of the film where I felt it went off track was also visually very dark. I find it difficult when films are so dark like that, visually dark, not thematically dark, although it was thematically dark as well. But it was with 3D, it makes it even harder to see what's happening for me, and I don't know if that's because of my particular vision issues or my age or what. But once it got,
you're saying your lack of vision.
Once it visually became brighter, I wasn't as distracted by the 3D, and that's the problem for me. A lot of times, 3D I just find distracting, and in this case, I definitely, we will certainly see it again. We already have tickets for another showing. We're going to actually see it at Disney.
Yes, at Disney.
But I would not see it in 3D again.
I actually want to see it in IMAX 3D.
You want to see everything in IMAX 3D.
I think it would really bring a lot to it. Like when we saw, Star Trek Into Darkness, remember how the volcano scene with Spock and all that? I literally felt like Ash was.
But wasn't that also a higher speed film?
Well, it's a higher frame rate, but it's IMAX. Yeah, so it's more IMAX is true 3D to me. Even though all these are 3D that we see pretty much now are 2D to 3D conversions, and usually they're what I call atmospheric 3D. They give you that encompassing feeling of being there. But the only movie I've ever really seen that really was great on the 3D was Avatar. And I know I'm getting a little bit off the subject, getting too much into 3D, but it was good in 3D. At ours, it was little parts of it were distracting a little bit.
Well, I did think, and I've read, goodness, it feels like I've read just about every review out there. I did not read any reviews until after I saw the film. But I wanted to see, how close what I thought was. And pretty much the reviews that I've read have said the same kind of thing, where there's a part of the film that just doesn't fit. There's some reviews out there that are just ugly. Not as many as I've seen on some other films. Most of them are still like, yeah, this is a good film. Sometimes very much comparing it to some of the criticisms of Force Awakens that, okay, we've seen this before and we've seen this before and we've seen this before.
But what J.J. Abrams managed to do seemed to work really well.
On The Force Awakens.
On The Force Awakens, yeah. He took what was old and still made it feel new, and he still kind of broke some ground on some things in the film. So,
Well, I think that is it George Edwards who directs this one? Edwards manages to take it's like he had all these requirements, all these things that he had to get in there, and for the most part, except for that one big hole, he manages to do that. But in setting up the story in that early part of the film that just for me doesn't work, it's very clumsy and it's trying to accomplish too many things. Oh, sorry, Gareth Edwards, not George. Yeah. I knew it started with a G. Far more sexy Gareth than George.
You were probably thinking of George Lucas. I don't know. The Lucas.
No. Well, this is the Edwards, I guess. And now maybe you'll have friends who name their babies Edwards instead of Lucas.
Well, at least he didn't become Jar Jar Abrams, because if J.J. Abrams would have messed up Force Awakens, he would forever be known as Jar Jar.
But, so you get things that are familiar. And a lot of times I see films like this that are a continuation, and you do have that sort of, here's the recipe list, here are all the ingredients you're supposed to put in the film, now go make a movie. And a lot of times I feel like they fail. This time, I don't think he does fail. I think it is a successful film. It just could have used less choppiness.
Yeah, there were parts of it, I feel like if I had been a scriptee on it and I had written part of the screenplay, I would have maybe condensed some of that, and I would have made a few changes to the early parts of the film.
Well, another problem I had was that in some of the characters, a couple of pairs,
I did find myself saying, okay, what's this person's name? What planet am I on? Now
meet 700,000 new people.
And
because
why are they not getting along and they're on the same side?
Well, I literally figure, and usually this is a thing, this is a problem you have. I'm constantly having to explain who people are on Game of Thrones for you. But
it was like if they had capes, I'd know.
Literally, I've certainly said
or lightsabers. I'd remember.
There were a couple characters who were in the same scenes with each other, and when they were apart, I couldn't remember who was who. And so I was confused.
Some of the actors actually
why is he doing
looked
that?
alike that were different characters.
Yeah,
so.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm saying. There were 2 pairs specifically that I'm like, wait a minute. And I was
like,
confused.
Okay,
for
who
a
is
minute.
that? Is he an older version,
In fact,
a younger
in one
version?
part, I was confused for 20 minutes, and then I was like,
oh, this isn't Star Trek.
That's why they're calling it like literally, that's why they're calling him by a different name.
Who knew?
Like the fact that they were using a different name didn't even clue me in. So maybe I was just too tired.
I don't know, but
I was like, he shaved.
There's definitely one main character that everybody has by now you probably know is in there. I'm not saying the name, but there's some of the best scenes in the movie, and if you can figure out who that is, you'll have to wait for our next episode when we
spoil it next week.
We totally spoil it.
I mean, and they're definitely. We saw the very first screening in that was available for us to see here,
right?
And our theater was not full, although and we had purchased tickets online, and the person at the theater told us that they had a screening that was pre-sold out.
Well, when we came out of our screening, there was a line almost out the door.
Full, yeah.
So we did one of the earlier screenings so that we could see it. I didn't want to wait.
Well, because we're too old to stay up that late.
Well, that's it. But yeah, it was.
The crowd. It was clearly a fan crowd that we were with.
Yeah, and I imagine that next crowd was probably even more hyped up when they saw it.
For sure, especially after standing there for so long.
Yeah.
But so there were a lot of callbacks to the other movies, and so it's very, I think you said at the beginning, it's very recognizable that this is part of the Star Wars universe.
It's kind of like if I made a Star Wars movie or like J.J. Abrams made it, but I wasn't allowed to like use everything Star Wars. I had to make references to things. I don't know. And they let me play with some of the Star Wars toys in the movie, but not all of them, I don't know.
Well, sometimes I felt like, and maybe this is because they were able to do things digitally, but it was almost like too many different, well, I already said too many characters, and even too many ambiance characters, too much. They were just, like, this is a crowded universe. Like, you cannot go anywhere alone.
There's one point that you made about when they talk about their secret plans, they're always in a public place.
I didn't say that. A critic said that. It's like, maybe the rebels could learn about not getting leaks, but every time they have secret plans to discuss, they're in a standing room only, general admission audience. They're all standing around a table, and there's 300 people.
Is it Empire leaks or Rogue leaks?
Everybody is getting to voice their opinion about what they should do.
Yeah,
and that's a callback.
That's true. But that last half of the movie, once the engine got
I don't think
going,
it's half. I think it's actually more than half. So
more
I think
than half, yeah.
It's just
and some of the battles in there were incredible, and some of the best believable. Somehow even though they were probably all digital, they felt more believable when I put them up against something like Episode 3's battles, which were pretty incredible. Like
those
Anakin,
were digital.
Those were all pretty much digital.
But digital's better now.
Yeah. I know, but still, it felt like these actual, not so much how they looked, but just these battle scenes felt a little bit, to me, more authentic than
sure.
Well,
and I thought, and this is the thing, it's like we're talking about, I think Gareth Edwards did a great job of directing this. I think that the script, again, everything I say is except that part. Like, here's an asterisk if this was written out, asterisk, except that part. The script was on point, and the editing. And, I mean, I think this is very important. The sound was good. The editing was good. The visuals were good. And it all worked together pretty seamlessly. Mm-hmm. And then we also got some maneuvers and things that we've never seen before.
Yes, especially towards the end. There's a couple of characters.
So we did pull some things out that weren't expected.
Wow, didn't know they could do that. And, and so glad that they did. And one of the characters, it built up this person's reputation to what they really were in some of the expanded universe books, which aren't officially Star Wars canon anymore, but it built up one of these kids. I'm trying desperately not to ruin this and all that. So
That's what I was about to say.
yeah.
So definitely, since they have some old stuff and then some new stuff, it just is a really good synthesis that is not just entertaining. I think it is compelling. And I think it's unexpected in some ways, especially the development of the characters and how things play out for the people that we come to know in this particular film.
So the bottom line is Rogue One worth seeing? My opinion, definitely. It is a different version of Star Wars than you've seen on film, but it holds up. It feels part of the universe, but yet still a little bit different to be unique in its own way.
It's good to see the expansion.
Yes.
Like, the first film was so close and intimate. This is definitely a broader view. And I have to say, in terms of is this a film worth seeing, I'm excited that I already have tickets to see it again.
I am too. And the fact that these characters exist in that same universe and are still tied to events that you'll see later in Star Wars movies.
That you'll see later in the past.
Later in the past that remain in the past that are really the future. Wow, this is time travel. You sure we're not talking Star Trek
out
on
of
this
order
episode?
Star Wars is.
Yoda directed it. There you go. It's Yoda's fault.
Don't use the word Jedi Order anymore because clearly no order.
Yeah, Jedi disorder.
Jedi disorder.
All right, so go pack the theaters near you and go see Rogue One. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Geek Homeworld podcast with your host, SavageTechman. You can find us on Libsyn, Google+, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, listen to us on iTunes, see us on YouTube, be part of our Mixler chats. Thank you. See you again on the Geek Homeworld podcast.
Geek Homeworld.